Good evening, everyone. Thank you for hopping on to tonight's Paying for College virtual information session. We are really excited to have with us tonight Miss Anna O'Brien. She's been with us for a couple years now. She is our Georgia Students Finance Commission outreach representative. And again, really glad that she is able to be with us tonight to share all things federal and state aid when it comes to paying for college. I will not take any more time, but I will just say, please utilize the Q&A feature, as we will have an opportunity at the end to answer any questions that were raised by you all. But again, we're going to allow Ms. O'Brien to go ahead and get through her presentation. And again, we will take all questions at the end, those that have been submitted to the Q&A feature. And of course, if anything comes up that we can quickly answer while she's presenting, we will be sure to do that as well. So again, I am going to let Ms. O'Brien take it away.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Good evening. Like they said, I am your representative from the Georgia Student Finance Commission, which essentially means I'm here to help guide you through this financial aid process as best I can and hopefully make it to where you never have to talk to any of those 1-800 robot numbers if you can so help it. So today we're going to go through all the ins and outs of financial aid. We're really going to talk about what it is, all the different types of aid that there are. We're going to specifically break down our federal programs as well as our state of Georgia programs, how you apply for these programs, and then what it looks like on the back end after all those applications have been submitted. So let's just talk what financial aid is, because oftentimes if you ask a student who's attending a post-secondary institution how they paid for college, oftentimes that answer is going to be financial aid. But what does that really mean? Financial aid helps your student pay for any educational expenses. Now, this can be both a direct or an indirect cost. Direct costs are anything that your student's going to pay directly to their college. So those tuition, extra fees like that technology fee, transportation fee that some institutions have, on-campus housing if your freshman's required to live on campus, meal plans, even parking permits if they decide to bring their car to school with them. Those are all things that you're going to pay to the school directly. Indirect costs are costs simply associated with going to college, and these can also be covered by financial aid. So these are things like books, rent if your student lives off campus, a new laptop if their laptop breaks, gas to get to and from home. All of those things are indirect costs and can also be covered by financial aid. Cost of attendance is another term we really like to define right off the top because this is a phrase you're not only going to see throughout this presentation, but you're going to see the institutions themselves use it. This cost of attendance number is simply an estimation of what it could cost to attend that institution per year. So it's going to include all those tuition and fees, books and supplies. It's also going to include all of those indirect costs we spoke about. So housing, meals, gas, any personal cost are all going to be summed up in that cost of attendance number. So let's dive straight on in and let's break down the different types of aid. So forms of financial aid are going to be scholarships and grants. Those two are my favorite too because those are nice little free money gifts that your student does not have to repay once they're done with college. Loans and work study programs are also really great options for a lot of students, and we're going to dive into those as well. Now, financial aid can come from not just the federal and state government. Those are the two we are going to heavily discuss today. But they can come from private colleges and universities themselves, private foundations, professional and service organizations, as well as even employers and private companies. So parents, where you work, where your student works, where you volunteer, where you spend your time on Sundays, can all be sources of financial aid. Now, I just said that scholarships are my favorite thing, which is true because that's free money for your student that doesn't have to be paid back at the end of the day. Now, we encourage students to start locally. So look at, again, parents where you work, students where they work, local organizations within the community oftentimes can all be sources of financial aid. Once you've exhausted all of those local resources, however, we do have a national scholarship database on georgiafutures.org. We recommend students get on there, start early. Don't stop at one or two. Really get in that search tool and be creative. Are you left handed? Are you a vegetarian? Are you a twin? What are your hobbies? What are your interests? I had a student tell me not too long ago, he found a scholarship that was like if you wore Thor in Infinity War and you wrote a really cool short story, the coolest story was like $500. So when we say there are scholarships out there for everyone, we absolutely mean it. This scholarship search tool is a completely free resource found on georgiafutures.org. So, we're going to start off today by talking about our federal aid programs. So, the eligibility requirements for the federal aid to receive federal aid are really quite simple. Mostly just be a U.S. citizen or eligible non citizen. If you have questions about what falls under that eligible non citizen category, you can view their requirements on Federal Student Aid's website, studentaid.gov. Now, we're going to start off today talking about the different grants that the federal government offers. The Pell Grant and the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, best known as the FSEOG, are both for students who have been deemed to have certain financial needs. If you have questions about whether or not you think your student would qualify for either of these, you can go to Student Aid's website and read all about how they determine who qualifies for what. If you think they would qualify or benefit from that FSEOG, reach out to your student schools directly because not all institutions participate. So reach out to them, see if they participate, especially if you think that that's one that your student would benefit from. Now, grants like scholarships are free money that don't have to be paid back at the end of the day, which is why we highly encourage students to get as many as they can. Not all grants, though, are just that free conditionless money, like that Pell Grant or that FSEOG. So the TEACH grant, for example, is a career-based grant, specifically for undergraduate, post-baccalaureate, or graduate students who are enrolled to begin a coursework in teaching. What's important about these career-based grants, like I said, they come with stipulations and conditions. This one, for example, if your student accepts it, they're also agreeing to serve as a full-time teacher in a high-need field in a public or private elementary or secondary school that specifically services low-income students. If your student did not fulfill that obligation upon graduation, that nice free money grant that they were so excited about would become a loan that would require repayment. So again, if your student's offered a grant that's not that Pell Grant or that FSEOG, just be sure they're reading those terms and conditions. They know what they're agreeing to. So they know how to fulfill those obligations so they don't have to repay it. The Federal Work Study Program is one I really encourage mostly our first and second year undergraduate students to look into. As they're coming right on campus, this is a great opportunity to allow them to work full or part time directly on campus. So, work where they're living, working where they're going to class. It gets them really connected to campus early. It allows them to earn at least minimum wage. And at the most recent campus I spoke with, minimum wage on their campus was $13.50 an hour. Again, this allows them to work on campus. So, as a campus tour guide, a library assistant, helping set up or break down for sporting events, even as an office assistant, oftentimes those positions fall under this federal work study program. These jobs often offer a lot of flexibility for your student as well, because those who are supervising these positions know what your student's work schedule looks like. They understand what those extracurriculars are. They understand a student probably wants to go to a football game or two on a Saturday. So again, it allows them to earn a good bit of pocket change, a lot of flexibility working directly on campus, so they can pay for that laptop if it breaks, pay for that gas to visit home, and pay for those books. Now, most of the time when we think about federal aid, the first thing we go to is student loans. So today we are going to break down the difference between those subsidized and unsubsidized loans because those are the ones that undergraduate students are offered. These two are very similar in name and very similar in overall function, but there is a distinct difference between the two. So with a subsidized loan, well, for both loans, the amount for both the subsidized and unsubsidized, the overall amount is going to be determined by the institution based on that overall cost of attendance number, financial need, and other aid and loan limits. But for a subsidized loan, the interest is paid by the government while the student is enrolled, versus an unsubsidized loan where your student is responsible for paying the interest. Now, the student can choose to defer that interest while they're enrolled for at least half time, but ultimately the interest will be added to the principal amount of the loan. So if your student only needs one of the two and they're offered both, we really recommend that they take that subsidized loan first because, again, they don't have to worry about the interest until after repayment begins. Parent Plus loans are ones that we really like to touch on, especially while we have parents here, because these loans are going to be in the name of the parent and not the student. So only one parent can be the borrower, and if you already have one loan out for an uh, uh, if you already have one of these loans out for a dependent student, you can take out an additional loan for an additional dependent student. As with all these loans, please be sure that you're paying attention to the interest rates from year to year because they can and tend to vary just a little bit. So again, if you would like to view those interest rates, you can view all that information on studentaid.gov. Now, as you can see, amounts for loans are going to increase based on years of study. So freshmen max out at that 5,500 number, and again, amounts increase for subsequent years of study. Similar to those Parent Plus loans, like we just said, interest rates vary from year to year. So every year, if your student is taking out student loans, be sure they're checking those interest rates. They see how they're fluctuating from year to year. There we go. So now we're going to talk about Georgia's financial aid programs. So the Helping Outstanding Pupils Educationally program, best known as the HOPE program, is completely 100% funded by the Georgia Lottery. We do have a few general eligibility requirements for the HOPE program, and again, these are going to be for the student and not the parent. The one I really want to focus on this evening is that second bullet point, be registered with selective service if required. So this simply means for all of our male students, you must be registered with selective service to receive any state aid from us. This used to be part of that FAFSA. They used to kind of flag if you were a male student and say, hey, we see that you're a male student. Have you registered with selective service? It is no longer part of the new application. However, it is still a requirement for you to receive state aid from us. So within 30 days of your 18th birthday, just make sure you're registering with selective service. If you don't turn 18 until after you submit your applications for aid or even after you get on campus for your freshman year, no worries. Just be sure you're still registering with selective service because we do have checkpoints and it will be something that is flagged for us to check at the next checkpoint. So we're going to start off breaking down the HOPE program by talking about the HOPE scholarship. So for the HOPE scholarship, the student must be pursuing either an associate's or a bachelor's degree. They have to graduate with high school 3.0 high school HOPE GPA and have earned at least 4 academic rigor course credits. Now, if you've never heard of an academic rigor course, no worries. Any AP, IB, or dual enrollment course, as well as any upper level core course, so like Algebra 2, Pre-Cal, Zoology, Biology 2, Foreign Language 2 or higher, so French 2, French 3, all fall under that academic rigor list. Your high school HOPE GPA is a little bit different from your student's high school GPA found on their transcript, and that's because we only look at a student's core courses from 9th through 12th grade. We don't look at any of those extracurriculars when calculating that HOPE GPA. Transcripts are uploaded to us automatically from your high school once a year. So if you are curious about what your student's high school HOPE GPA is or how many academic rigor credits they have earned, there is no need to try and go through their transcript and calculate it yourself because we will tell your students exactly if where they are on track for the HOPE or Zell Miller scholarship. All they have to do is log into their Georgia Futures account or create an account, click that My High School HOPE GPA button on the left-hand side of the screen, and it's going to take them to a page that looks very similar to this one. So again, we will tell them exactly what their HOPE calculated GPA is, as well as how many of those academic rigor credits they have earned thus far. Now, once your student's at their post-secondary institution, how do they keep their Hope Scholarship? So students have to maintain at least a 3.0 College Hope GPA at each of our checkpoints. We check at the end of every spring semester, but we also check by the attempted semester credit hour as well. So, for example, let's say Timmy is in his freshman year and he has the Hope Scholarship. Spring semester rolls around and Timmy has a 2.9999 GPA. Unfortunately, we at GSFC do not round up, so Timmy would lose his Hope Scholarship for his sophomore year. However, if Timmy were able to get it back above that 3.0, by the time our next checkpoint rolls around, he could then regain the Hope Scholarship. Now, you can only lose and regain the Hope Scholarship one time, but we do offer grace in that area. Now, let's say Timmy graduates high school and he doesn't qualify for the Hope Scholarship. No worries, your student can still qualify for Hope once they get on campus. All they have to do is maintain that 3.0 at the end of the spring semester checkpoint, and if they meet that minimum, they can then gain the Hope Scholarship while at their institution. So now we're going to shift a little bit and we're going to look at the Zell Miller Scholarship. So if your student is the designated valedictorian or salutatorian and they meet those minimum Hope eligibility requirements, they can automatically earn the Zell Miller Scholarship. If they are not one of those students, however, they must have a minimum 3.7 high school Hope GPA, have 4 academic rigor courses, and score either a 1200 on the SAT or a 25 on the ACT. It's important to note these scores must be earned in one sitting. You cannot superscore for the Zell Miller Scholarship, but you can take the exams up until the day you graduate. So once your student's at their post-secondary institution, maintaining the Zell Miller Scholarship is very similar to Hope. All you have to do is maintain the minimum 3.3 College Hope GPA, and we check at all of the same checkpoints that we do for Hope. So let's say, for example, we're back with Timmy. It's his freshman year, and this time he has the Zell Miller Scholarship. If at the end of the spring semester comes around and Timmy has a 3.2999 GPA, again, we do not round up, so he would lose the Zell Miller Scholarship for the upcoming year. However, because he's still above the minimum 3.0 required for the Hope Scholarship, he would just fall from the Zell Miller to the Hope Scholarship. If he can get it back above the 3.3 before our next checkpoint, he can regain the Zell Miller Scholarship. Similar to Hope, you can only lose and regain that Hope Scholarship or that Zell Miller Scholarship one time, but we do offer grace in that area. Now, your student can lose eligibility a couple of different ways. The biggest, of course, is not meeting that GPA requirement, but they can also lose it if they've reached the maximum attempted hours. We do cap the Hope program at 127 semester hours. A typical bachelor's degree is about 120, so your student does have a little wiggle room there. But if they tend to be dropping a lot of courses really late in the semester, just gently remind them that the Hope program does have a little bit of a cap. Failing to use funds within 10 years of high school graduation or after you have received your first bachelor's degree will all disqualify you from the Hope program. So now we're going to shift a little bit and look at our grants. So our grants are for students who are enrolled in certificate and diploma programs. Oftentimes these are for more of our technical school students. Do not be fooled. We do not need a high school diploma, GED. We do not look at GPA or test scores. You just must be enrolled in that eligible certificate or diploma program. Now, maintaining the Hope grant, your student just must maintain a 2.0 college cumulative GPA, and we check this at 30 Hope grant paid semester hours and 60 Hope grant paid semester hours. The Zell Miller grant's a little bit different from that Hope grant because you do have to start as a Hope grant recipient. As you can see, to earn that Zell Miller grant, you have to have at least a minimum 3.5 college cumulative GPA. So again, you will be a Hope Grant recipient initially, but the Zell Miller grant may be paid retroactively for that first term. For this one, we check at the end of every term of enrollment rather than those 30 and 60 hours. The Zell Miller grant maxes out at 63 combined paid hours, Zell and Hope. We get lots of questions very frequently about the Hope and Zell Miller Scholarship, what they cover, if they're the same thing. And don't worry, we're going to break all of that down this evening. So, as you can see on our chart, the Zell Miller Scholarship is full standard tuition, meaning from year to year, no matter what, no matter tuition increases, decreases, anything like that, we are always going to pay that full standard tuition so long as your student qualifies for it. The Hope Scholarship is a little bit different. So, the Hope Scholarship used to cover between 60 and 80% of tuition at our public institutions here in Georgia. After COVID, the state of Georgia decided to reinvest money into the students of Georgia to try and help boost those enrollment numbers at our public institutions. To do this, they decided to raise the minimum that the Hope Scholarship would pay for to at least 90% of your students' tuition. Now, every year, the state of Georgia, when they vote on that new budget, one of the things that's going to be on the docket is the Hope Scholarship. So they're going to vote on if that Hope's going to pay the minimum 90%, if it's going to pay 96%, or if they're going to do what they've done for the past few years, have the Hope Scholarship pay 100% of tuition. Now, if they vote that the Hope Scholarship is going to keep paying that 100%, what it's saying is the Hope Scholarship is going to pay 100% of whatever last year's tuition costed. So that means if for the current academic year we're in, your student is looking at Kennesaw State and tuition there is $5,000, they vote Hope's going to pay 100%. Next year, the Hope Scholarship's only going to pay $5,000. Even if KSU decides to raise tuition costs from $5,000 to $5,500, the Hope Scholarship would still only pay $5,000 because that's how much 100% was for the previous academic year. So as you can see, that's why it still says portion of tuition on our chart, because we cannot guarantee that even if it is paying, quote, 100%, that it will be that full standard tuition. Because institutions can do what they like with their tuition costs. So again, if your student is close to that Zell Miller scholarship, test score wise, GPA wise, we really encourage them to push for it because that consistency is really nice. However, the Hope Scholarship is still paying a very large amount of tuition. At our private institutions, it's a little bit different because instead of paying a percentage, we do a set amount per semester. The If your student is a recipient of the Hope Grant or the Zell Miller Grant, they are also eligible for what's called the Hope Career Grant. Now, there are over 17 different categories that fall under the Hope Career Grant and over 300 different certificate and diploma programs. This grant was created to kind of help boost enrollment in certain high demand programs here in Georgia. So, if your student, again, is one of those Hope or Zell Miller grant recipients, this Hope grant, if they qualify for it, is just another kind of lump sum of money to go on top of that Hope and Zell Miller grant. It's important to note if your student is receiving a Hope grant and a Hope Career Grant, they could have their full tuition paid for with the combination of both. If you have questions and you want to see the full list of programs that fall under this Hope Career Grant eligibility, we have the full list available on our website at georgiafutures.org. Now, this is a continuation of our other state programs here in Georgia, and the one I really want to touch on is that last bullet point, that Tuition Equalization Grant, or that TEG. So this one specifically provides grant assistance towards our Georgia residents enrolled at eligible private colleges and universities here in Georgia. So this is essentially another kind of lump sum of money to go towards your educational costs to help offset cost a little bit more since private institutions are so much more expensive than our public institutions here in Georgia. This is a further continuation of all of our programs, and if you would like to view in detail any of the eligibility requirements for these, all that information is available on our website, georgiafutures.org. Now, we've talked and broken down all of this aid, so how do you apply for it? Students can apply for all of this aid one of two different ways. The first one we're going to talk about is the Georgia Student Finance Application, or the GSF app. So this application determines your eligibility for state aid only. It is a one-time application, meaning this is a one and done. So once you complete it, you never have to think about it again. It can be completed through your student's Georgia Futures account. It is less than 12 questions total, takes less than 5 minutes to complete. And like I mentioned, it does determine eligibility for state aid only. I really encourage students to complete this one in conjunction with the FAFSA, more so to have this as a safety net for themselves. The FAFSA that we're going to talk about next has to be completed every year. So if you forget one year, or if something weird happens and your FAFSA is late being processed, if you have this GSF app on file, you'll always receive that state aid from us no matter what on time. The FAFSA that I just mentioned, the free application for federal student aid, this is the application that determines your eligibility for both federal and state aid. So if you were looking to just complete one application, this is the one that I would recommend. This is one that you're going to have to complete every year. It typically opens in October of each year, but this year it's going to become available on December 1st. When it comes to completing the FAFSA, like I said, the application is completely free to do. And even though it does not open until December, one thing you can do now in preparation is by creating your FSA ID. Your FSA ID is simply kind of a fancy way of saying create your account on studentaid.gov's website. Both the student and the parents are going to need an FSA ID. Creating an FSA ID, like I mentioned, is very simple. You're going to start by going to studentaid.gov, the website where that FAFSA is located. If you're a parent and you already have an account for yourself, whether it was for you going through this process or you were helping another dependent go through this process, you do not need to create an additional account. You can continue to use the one that you already have. Students, though, especially, the biggest thing about creating an FSA ID is making sure you use an email you're going to continue to have access to. So do not use your high school email. Use one, again, like I said, you're going to have all throughout college as well as after you graduate your post secondary institution. Make sure you're not sharing this information with anyone and do those account verification steps. In case you do forget that username and password, you'll always be able to get back in. Now, with this new FAFSA, they have what is called the IRS Direct Data Exchange. And when everything works, it's able to pull your tax information directly from the IRS, enabling you to skip most of those financial questions. If we recommend that you continue to have that federal income tax return information on hand with you, because if for whatever reason it's unable to pull that information directly, you'll have it there with you and you'll still be able to go through those questions. Now, studentaid.gov, this is the screenshot of the homepage. Like I mentioned, this is where that FAFSA is going to be found. That opens up December 1st. It's also where you're going to go to be able to create an account. And like I said, that's something you can go ahead and do today in preparation. If your student is going to start, if they're a senior and they're going to start in college next fall, so fall of 2025, they're going to fill out the FAFSA for the 2025-2026 school year. Again, this one becomes available December 1st of this year, and it's going to ask for your 2023 tax return information because the FAFSA always looks 2 years prior. Now, once you've submitted these applications, what does it look like on the back end? So to receive a financial aid package, the student's going to have to at least list the institution on their FAFSA. They're going to be able to list up to 20 colleges, which means they could potentially receive up to 20 of these financial aid packages. They're going to have to at least apply for admission and at some of these institutions be accepted. All of these financial aid award offer letters are going to have essentially the same information. It's going to tell your student how much it's going to cost to attend that institution for the year, and it's going to break down the tuition, those extra fees, all of those things. It's also going to include how much financial aid the institution is providing. So it's going to include those student loans that the students offered, any grants like the Pell Grant, FSEOG, even the Teach Grant will appear there. It's also where it will preemptively show if your student qualifies for Hope or Zell, though final determination is not guaranteed until after we get those final transcripts. It's also going to have the amount the family is expected to contribute. Now, don't worry, they're not asking you to pull out your checkbook then and there, but it is going to let you know what is left over that you are going to need to find coverage for. The best order to accept aid, of course, is those scholarships and grants first. Again, those are those things we talked about at the beginning. Those are free money. It's not going to have to be paid back at the end of the day. Just make sure if that teach grant appears, you're making sure that that free truly is free. Number two is work study. That's that part-time job that we discussed. It allows the student to earn at least minimum wage, gives them a lot of flexibility, and it allows them, again, to help pay for those books, pay if a laptop breaks, and gas to get home. Number three is our federal student loans. These must be paid back with interest and repayment begins 6 months after graduation. Consider a subsidized loan first. So if your students offered both that subsidized and unsubsidized, again, see if they take that subsidized loan first because that interest doesn't accrue until after repayment begins. I also like to point out if your student only needs about $500 of coverage when it comes to these loans, but they're offered the full 5,500 amount between the subsidized and unsubsidized, they could completely deny that unsubsidized loan and only accept a partial amount of the subsidized loan. So you do have options when it comes to these federal student loans as well. You do not have to take out the full amount. And then finally, those state government or college loans, as well as private loans. Oftentimes, these last two are going to have much higher interest rates than those federal student loans will. They have much less favorable terms and conditions. So we really recommend this to be like your plan G, if you will. Have it way, way in your back pocket and see if you can exhaust those first three options first. Some additional resources. The biggest is going to be georgiafutures.org. This is where all this information today was pulled from. The feature I really want to talk about the most, you can see the screenshot of it here. It's called our Plan and Pay for College feature. Essentially, what this is an estimated award offer letter for your student. It's what we just talked about, and this is an estimation of it. So your student is going to be able to select up to 3 institutions at a time and tell us if they think they would qualify for Hope or Zell, if they think they would receive minimum or maximum Pell or none at all. We'll include the TEG if they're attending a private institution. We'll also do an estimate of those uh, those student loans, those subsidized and unsubsidized. And we will give your student an estimation of what would be left over if all of that aid was applied. So again, this is a really great place to start to get the ball rolling and get those conversations started about how much a college is going to cost. Studentaid.gov, of course, is that federal aid site that I've been referencing. So this is where that FAFSA is located. It's where you're going to go to create that FSA ID. It also has a lot of great information about the different types of aid, how they calculate who gets what, even really great information about repayment options. So after your student graduates, what that kind of looks like. It really is just a really, really great resource. Finally, if your student does not have a Georgia Futures account, please be sure that they create one. That's going to be how they're able to track if they're eligible for Hope or Zell Miller. They're going to be able to save those scholarships from that scholarship search tool to their profile and go back and visit them later. They're also going to be able to view their Georgia Match letter there. If your student has not received their Georgia Match letter in the mail, they can view it on their Georgia Futures profile. That Georgia Match letter is for our seniors. So essentially, what we've done is we've taken the most recent transcript we have on file for you and academically compared you to all of our public and technical institutions here in Georgia and sent you a full list of schools that you are academically eligible for. There are only 3 public institutions not included on that list, and that's the University of Georgia, Georgia Tech, and Georgia College and State University because they have holistic admissions processes. But this letter is a really great place to start if you're still unsure about where you see yourself next fall. We send these out in October because November is free apply to college month here in Georgia, which means most of our Georgia institutions have waived application fees completely and made it free for you to apply. So again, if you're a little unsure, you're still filling out your options, that Georgia Match letter is a great place to begin. And then seniors, again, that FAFSA opens up December 1st. Go ahead and create that FSA ID and be ready for that opening day. Finally, this is my contact information. This is my email and my phone number. You can text or call that number. If you have any questions about anything we've talked about this evening, you have specific situations you'd like to discuss, please feel free to contact me. Again, my whole job is to help you navigate this process. I also do 30-minute virtual meetings. So if you wanted to hop on a call similar to this one with me, I can send you that information or it's available on our website and you can book time directly on my calendar and we can get on a call and talk about all of the fun questions that you have. And then finally, that is my work Instagram as well as Georgia Futures, where we're always reposting information from federal student aid or from us, anything that we deem important for your students. Um, so yes, this is the end of my presentation. Do we have any questions? I will leave this contact info up as we go through the questions. How about that?
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Miss O'Brien. We had a few questions come through. I will just, Mrs. Bonicelli was gracious enough in replying to them, but I will just reiterate. The first one was, how long in advance do you recommend to start searching for scholarships? Of course, we said as early as possible, but would definitely like to know your thoughts on that as well.
Absolutely, as early as possible. If the unless the scholarship specifically designates that it has to be used for like a current graduating senior or it has to be used within a specific school year, you can start applying now. Um, and that national scholarship search tool on our website, like I said, all of those have been vetted by us. So as long as you're eligible, we really recommend that you go ahead and start applying.
Awesome. Someone did ask if this presentation would be available later, and of course, yes, it will. We will post it on our Sprayberry Counseling website, as well as our CTLS page for students to quickly and easily access. We also received another one. Parent was asking about having an account on Georgia Futures to see student info and scholarships. Of course, we reiterated that it is a student-led process. And once students create an account, they can share that account information with their parents. But thankfully, the scholarship search can be used without a login. Is there anything else to that?
No, everything on our website you're able to access without an account. The student account, however, that account's the only one that would be able to view like the Hope GPA and things like that. Um, so the student account is the one that they can apply to colleges through, fill out that GSF app. Parents can create an account, but they're not going to be able to access those same features.
Um, And one more here, it says, is there a timeline somewhere that shows what we should be doing each year in terms of college tours, applying, scholarships, etc.?
Absolutely. I don't know if y'all can see me, but we have what's called an 11th and 12th grade checklist.
They
Uh,
can
we
see you
also
now.
we also have ninth and 10th grade checklist available on our website. Um, they go through school year by school year. We break it down by semester as well. We even have one on our website that goes in more detail and breaks it down month by month what we recommend for students to be doing. Uh, if you go to georgiafutures.org, I believe it's under our resources tab under marketing materials. You can view the PDFs for those. They are on our website, like I said, completely free to access, and we break it down by 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th, um, and go over all the things that we recommend doing from year to year.
And I'll share that we actually have those hard copies in our counseling office. So if you have your students stop by, they can receive hard copies of what Ms. O'Brien just shared with you all, this checklist. And let's see, where can I find more information about FSCOG?
Absolutely. That information can be found on studentaid.gov. So that website that we talked about where the FAFSA is located, where you're going to go to create that account, The FSEOG is a federal aid program, so you can go there and find more information on that.
Someone wants the slides. They said, can we get these slides in our email so we can refer back? Again, we will post this presentation to our Sprayberry Counseling website, which is just sprayberrycounseling.com. And we will also post it to our SHS School Counseling CTLS page, where your student will have access to that 24/7 as well. Looks like people are inquiring about grants and scholarships. Are there certain websites to search for grants or scholarships?
Absolutely. So again, the one we recommend, of course, is Georgia Futures. That is a national scholarship database. So we have essentially just taken all the ones we found and vetted and put them on there. Those are private scholarships. They're not funded by the state of Georgia. So you can take those anywhere with you, including out of state. So just because you're looking at them on our website doesn't mean they have to be used in Georgia. I'm not sure if y'all have a specific place where you put like local scholarships that you found, but I'd recommend there as well. And then outside of that, I just recommend avoiding any website that asks for credit card or personal information as soon as you log on.
Yes, and we do. So Naviance, as you all know, that is the platform, our delivery service for all things post-secondary. So there is a scholarship search for both national and local scholarships. So please, I would encourage all of our students and parents to access those resources found in Naviance. And it looks like someone's requesting that we go back a screen. It reads, can you go back to the screen with the annual cost of tuition? I have a question about the scholarship amounts. It said the yearly Hope and Zell Miller coverage was a little over 5,000, but I thought it covered full or most of the tuition.
So I believe this person is asking about the screen that went over the student loan amounts because that is the one that caps out for freshman year at $5,500 for freshmen. The Hope and Zell Miller, like I mentioned previously, at our public institutions, it's a percentage. So that is where we would cover like Zell Miller for public schools is that full 100% standard tuition versus the Hope Scholarship, which is that minimum 90%, but could vary based on like the state of Georgia budget as well as tuition cost changes.
And we've just got one here that is a thank you, which is nice. Just saying, thank you so much for this information. I went to college 20 years ago and things are different.
That they are, and they change so quickly. Um, and like I said, if any of you have any questions, after all this is over or you really want to go through specific situations with me, please, please, please feel free to reach out, contact me. I'm more than happy to help answer any questions that I can to make this process a little bit easier.
Awesome. And it looks like that is it for questions. I'm not seeing anything else. All righty. Again, we thank you, Miss O'Brien. Again, that her contact information, phone number, email, and Instagram is posted there for you. And of course, we thank you, thank you, thank you for your time. And don't hesitate to reach out to your counselors if you need anything else. Thanks, everyone. Good night.